And today I'm joined by Charles Johnson IV, founder of For Kira for Moms, an organization born from one of the most painful and public examples of what it means when our healthcare system fails Black women. Charles has spent the last 10 years turning this pain into power, and this week alone, he has shown up in ways that remind us all why we fight and why it's personal. Charles, thank you for having this conversation with me.
Tasha, the honor
Um,
is absolutely all mine. Happy Black Mental Health Week. I'm just so excited to be here in fellowship and conversation with you.
Thank you. And I will say this, I don't know how you're still standing this week because I follow you on social media and you're in Atlanta at the Black Maternal Health Week block party alongside Congresswoman Lauren Underwood, who just this week we also had the privilege of interviewing for this series. And now
Wonderful.
you're chatting with us. You've just been all over the place. So thank you.
No, it's my honor. Listen, I'm just glad that y'all are willing to listen to me. You know what I'm saying, hear what I have to say, and giving this, in all sincerity, the opportunity to just have this conversation with the community about how we can work to make sure that our country's a better, safer place for mothers and babies. So it's an honor for me to be chatting with you, and I'm just looking forward to what I know is going to be just an amazing conversation.
And thank you. And one last thing, I just want to say this, and I mean this sincerely. I've had the pleasure of hearing you speak at Congressional Black Caucus Annual Legislative Conference, not once, but twice now over the past 2 years. And every single time I leave that room thinking, this man is not an advocate. He's a
Mm,
witness, and there's a difference and the depth of what you bring to these spaces. And I know it never gets easier to sit with, and I'm grateful every time you choose to show up and share it. So, really and truly, thank you so much.
thank you. Thank you so much as well.
Now, before we get into the advocacy of it all, do you mind telling us who Kira was, what she loved, what she was excited about, and who she was to you and your family?
Yeah, I'm a I I I I have the opportunity to brag on Kira, and anytime I get to talk about her, it still brings a smile to my face. We're talking about a woman that was sunshine personified, which is why I have this annoyingly bright yellow shirt on because she truly was just sunshine, lit up every room, never met a stranger, magnetic personality, and I think that I'll share this with you. She just made the most. I've never seen anybody just squeeze more out of 24 hours in a day, right? This woman raced cars. She spoke five languages. She traveled the world. She ran a marathon. She had a pilot's license. She was a skydiver. I could literally go on and on and on. And it's funny. I was telling somebody else this, and I'll tell you this. I was like, and then there's her personality. She's like this amazing mix between like Whitley Gilbert and Sister Soldier, right? Like she was about her people. She was about um just doing what she could in her own way to disrupt, injustice whenever she came across it, big or small. And, but she was a Southern belle. And, she was a lady's lady and a woman's woman, but she was somebody that you don't want to cross, right? And she just believed in people being seen and being heard. And
Yeah.
so she was just an amazing, amazing um, force of nature that just really challenged me to be a better man in every single aspect of my life.
That's beautiful. I love that you still hold on to that. And that that bright, and it's not that bright, but that shirt doesn't do it justice. I happen to like
Yeah.
bright yellow, and I know that your boys see all of that in the work
Yeah.
that you're doing. Can you tell our audience and the people who are advocates in this work, um, so that they understand how the system failed and how it failed
Yeah.
you as a husband?
Sure.
Whom at the time probably did like this wasn't even on your radar, right? You were getting ready to do husband things. So this wasn't on your radar. Can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I'll kind of share how we got to this. And there's a lot of people out here, particularly as we celebrate Black Maternal Health Week. I have to pay homage and just uplift and edify the work of the thousands and hundreds of thousands of folks across this country that have chosen this work. But unlike them, this work chose us. And so the story of this mission, this journey started 10 years ago. We walked into Cedars-Sinai Hospital in Los Angeles, where we expected to be the happiest day of our lives, expecting the birth of our second son, Langston. And instead, we walked into a nightmare. And it's important to understand that throughout Kira's entire pregnancy, she was perfectly healthy, no complications. All signs pointed to both her and our son being extremely healthy. And so, uh, at 2 o'clock on April 12th of 2016, we walked into Cedars-Sinai for what we expected to be a routine cesarean section at our doctor's recommendation. Langston, our second son, was born perfectly healthy, 10 fingers, 10 toes. He was perfect. And I jokingly, looked just like me. All right, it doesn't get any better than this, right? And so
That's a dad
we,
joke. Yes.
it's a dad joke. It's a dad joke, right? Super handsome, right? Just they got it right. And so they took us back to recovery, which is normal in a cesarean delivery. And as Kira's there resting, as Langston is there resting, this is around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And that's when I look down and I see blood coming from Kira's catheter at her bedside. So I brought it to the attention of the doctors and the nurses at Cedars. They come in, they examine Kira, they examined her physically, they took blood work. And very importantly, they ordered a CT scan or a CAT scan that was supposed to be performed stat. And so, for everybody that's listening today, what does that mean to you when you say stat? It means right now. And so at this point, concerned, but I'm thinking my wife is healthy, my baby is healthy, and we're at Cedars-Sinai. For those of y'all who aren't familiar with this hospital's reputation, this is what's supposed to be this fancy hospital in Beverly Hills, right? And our research, or what we understood, this was the best place in Los Angeles. What we thought would give Kira and Langston the best opportunity to thrive. And so it's important to understand, as I'm telling this story, when I got the medical records back at 6:44, they noted that she was a surgical emergency. 7 o'clock comes, no scan. They haven't taken her for surgery. 8 o'clock, her condition is continuing to deteriorate. I'm still asking, look, where's the CT scan? Where's surgery? And there's this game of dismissal, denial, and very importantly, deprioritization of Kira's just fundamental needs is continuing to escalate. 9 o'clock, no CT scan. 10 o'clock, it wasn't until after midnight that they finally made the decision to take Kira back to surgery. After allowing her to bleed and suffer internally for more than 10 hours, while myself and my family just begged and pled for them to just do something. When they took her back in the operating room and they opened her up, there were 3 liters of blood in her abdomen, from where she'd been able to bleed internally for more than 10 hours. And they operated on her, but they were unable to save her. Her heart stopped immediately. And I'm always transparent because you made a very important point about me preparing to do dad things when we walked in that hospital that day. And I'm always transparent about the fact that when we walked into that hospital, the thought that Kira would not walk out to raise her boys had never crossed my mind. I know you've heard me say this before. But what happened is, of course, our world was turned upside down and trying to figure out how this happened and why. And I truly thought when this first happened to our family that would happen to her. I thought that would happen to Kira. I thought it was an anomaly. I thought that in 2016, a mother that has access to health care, who is relentless about her prenatal care, who has a husband and a family that are there advocating. I never missed a prenatal appointment for either of my sons. I went on every hospital tour. I held her hand through Lamont's class, but it wasn't enough to make sure that she walked out of that hospital to raise her sons. And so what began to happen is I began to hear these other stories of other mothers that had had horrific birthing experiences, right? Other mothers that were forced into awkward situations where they had to advocate for themselves because the communication or the options presented to them, much like you mentioned, were not adequate. And unfortunately, I heard stories of other mothers that had made that ultimate sacrifice, much like Kira did, just trying to give the gift of life. And so I was shocked by a couple of things, learning that right here in the United States, we are the most dangerous country in this civilized world, or the industrialized world, I should say, for a mother to give childbirth. And then if we take a look just a little bit deeper, we come to understand, which is the reason we are here today during Black Maternal Health Week, that African American mothers are dying 4 times as often as their Caucasian counterparts. And so I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how I could make an impact, but I felt like I owed it to Kira and I felt like I owed it to my boys to do something. And so I began to share Kira's story the Friday before Mother's Day in 2017, a little bit over a year after Kira passed.
If you can talk
And
a little bit about what it is that you are the most proud of and the work that you've been doing over the last 10, 9 years in this movement.
yeah, no, thank you so much for that. And I want to be clear, right? Like, when we hear stories like Kira's, it's tough. And I know it's hard to hear and it's hard for us to listen to when we see ourselves in these stories
Yeah.
and it's heartbreaking, but I want to be very clear with everybody under the sound of my voice. I would not be here if I did not believe with every fiber of my body that we can fix this. Right. And so we approach this, just like you heard me talk about Kira, we approach this with her spirit and her energy, right? That there is no problem that is too big. There is no challenge that is insurmountable. And so we have a very clear goal, not to just improve maternal health outcomes, but to eradicate the maternal health crisis, right? And what does that look like? That looks like for us education, advocacy, and legislation. So over this past 10 years, um, I'm so tremendously proud of what I've seen on this journey. And that's a tough question, but I think the thing that kind of sizzled in my spirit when you said what was most proud makes me emotional thinking about it. But just what I've seen is the spirit of collaboration, right? Which is one of the things that I think that was missing or not as prevalent 10 years ago when I first started on this journey. And what I found is that there were a lot of people doing amazing work, but a lot of that work was in siloed environments, right? And now what I'm seeing is people intentional about raising the awareness of what they're doing and then seeking out other people that have a common goal and a shared outcome and figuring out how they can come together with shared expertise, resources, and knowledge to be a force multiplier for the work that one another are doing. And it's so beautiful. And it doesn't even have to be in an official capacity. It might be just collaboration for somebody understanding what you are going through, understanding the hearts of the people you serve. And sometimes those conversations are just as important as a shared grant reward, right? Having somebody that you can look, I'm in the trenches here in Texas, right? This is a hypothetical scenario, right? I'm in the trenches here in Texas and we are making tremendous strides, but these are some of the challenges we're having. But I have somebody that I can connect with in New Jersey that is on the same mission, right? And they understand the work. And I can talk to them and they can tell me what's working, what's not working, what they've learned, what their community is sharing with them. And then we can take it back and put it in our own gumbo and go out and serve the people. And so I'm so tremendously proud of it. I'm proud of the collaboration on the grassroots level. I'm proud of the coalition building on a national level. What we've seen is we've seen people come together from the grassroots organization to the corporate sector to the legislators, to the private foundations, all with one clear like notion, like, yo, enough is enough, right?
Yeah.
Like we should be able to get this right in our country. We can get this right. And bringing their own set of resources and expertise to the table to make sure that every mother in this country receives a safe, dignified birthing experience.
And I love that. I love that you mentioned the grassroots nature of it all. I'm biased because my job is part strategic partnerships, but I'm also a old church girl, so I believe in the touch a neighbor and say neighbor moment, and I feel like that's
In
exactly what
agreement.
this is.
I love
Absolutely.
that. Listen, you set off Black Maternal Health Week with the best analogy ever. You understand me? When I tell you I'm about to take that and run with it, this is that touch your neighbor moment. Like, I
Touch a
have
neighbor.
chills. That's where we are. We are in that touch your neighbor moment.
Touch
And
your neighbor. You have to.
you have to, and whether you're checking on them, whether you're collaborating, whether you have a solution, because it's not a nice to have, it is a must have. In an
Absolutely.
environment where so many things, particularly for organizations who are in the community doing the work, are contracting because of the macro factors,
Hmm.
Partnerships are the secret sauce, right? How can we find connectivity? How can we find alignment? And how can we find people that are going to help us cross our prospective finish line, whatever that finish line is? And so I just want to thank you for doing that. I want to thank you for being a facilitator. I want to thank you for being a conduit. And like I said, we would be nothing without partners like you, without our partners across this country, because that is truly our secret sauce and how we are able to um, make the magic happen.
Well, I thank you as a partner and just as a lived experience advocate and as a dad. And as Kira's cheerleader, because you out here and is I feel everything that she is and was in you, and so I appreciate that just diligence and in that work. And thank you for the 10 years of refusing to let Kira's name be just a statistic. Thank you for being in Atlanta this week and for the Hill and every room that you walk in to make it impossible to look away and to ignore the work that you're doing. So we're grateful. And with that said, we just want to say from Families USA, and to every Black mama and birthing person watching, you deserve to come home. And we are not going to stop partnering and fighting and advocating until that happens. So thank you and have a wonderful Black Maternal Health Week.